Peace and blessings, everyone. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. I'm so glad to see everyone. So happy that you are here. I am out of the office, not by choice. I have another call running on my computer, so I'm on my son's computer today. Downstairs in the kitchen. So for y'all that know me, that's good because I'm always upstairs in the office, right? So for those who do not know me, my name is Tamara T. Bush. And the reason why I'm doing these calls is so that I can provide clarity on consumer laws. This week, we're going to be covering the FDCPA, which is the Fair Credit or Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. And it's my intention to be able to break down the laws in the way that you can understand and take it and apply it to your situation. When I first began to study consumer law, I came across a few people that was teaching the information. Everyone has their own method of teaching. Some people will give you a law and then they'll say, go study. But what I'm finding is that your interpretation of the law is going to determine if you're able to get successful remedy for your situation, right? So if you know anyone that you believe will benefit from this information, please go ahead and share this broadcast out. I'm going to go ahead and share it in a few places now, just to make sure that I can get those who are wanting this information to join us in the discussion. So give me just a moment so I can go ahead and get that done. I want to make sure that everyone is getting is seeing and hearing me. So if you all can see and hear me, please go ahead and drop a 1 in the chat. And of course, drop your city and state so that I can know exactly where you're tuning in from. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share this broadcast to one of my pages here. Give me just a second. I wanna make sure this thing is shared. All right, okay. Share it there. And let's share it there. Okay, perfect. Let me, hold on a second. I'm gonna go out and come back in just to make sure that you all can see me. Hi, Rudy. Hi, Joshua, Andrew. Peace and blessings, everyone. Peace and blessings, everyone. All right, perfect. So you guys can see me and you can hear me. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. This is the juicy part of consumer law that I am super excited about. This law is going to take us more in depth. And I feel as though with the FDCPA, you're going to be able to gain a higher understanding of the instruments that you sign virtually every time that you walk into a bank or you go and do business and commerce. You get a loan for a house or a car, personal loan, a credit card, right? So this is it basically applies to everyone, right? So let's get into it. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Let's get into this topic tonight. And if you all have questions, please by all means drop them in the chat. I do have my stream going on my phone, so I will be able to see if you have a question. All right, let's get into it. Let's get into it. If I can bring up the right tab. I don't know what it is about Bing. Every time I use the search feature in Bing, it never gives me the results that I need. I always end up having to go back to Google, which is like, what in the world? Okay, let me get in there and get to the right code. Okay, perfect. I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right, and put a 2 in the chat if you can see my screen. We are on Legal Information Institute. We are on Cornell.edu, law.cornell.edu, which is typically where you can find the majority of the laws associated with US Code. There's other websites out there, but you'll come to find that when you are doing a Google search, Cornell Law is going to be at the top of your list, right? So we are covering the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, which is in Title 15, Chapter 41, Subchapter 5. It is US Code 1692. So congressional findings, anytime that we see congressional findings, that means that Congress has found something. That means that they have evidence of something taking place, right? And so when they have evidence of something taking place, they do a findings and declaration of purpose or declaration of statement so that they can bring to light what their findings are, right? And so what they have found is that there is an abundant evidence of abusive, deceptive, and unfair debt collection practices by many debt collectors. So if Congress is telling you that they seen an abundance of evidence and they have found an abundance of evidence, the way that I interpret that is if they have an abundance of evidence, that means that I have an abundance of evidence as well as a consumer, right? Abusive, deceptive, and unfair debt collection practices act by many debt collectors. Abusive debt collection practices contribute to the number of personal bankruptcies, marital instability, loss of jobs, and to invasions of individual privacy. And they have to put that in there. So if you all remember the discussion from last week, we covered the FCRA, and the biggest issue which is happening against consumers today is an invasion of privacy. We have a right to privacy. Congress stated that, they also stated that in the FCRA that there is an invasion of privacy, right? So they're basically stating that there is an inadequacy of laws. Existing laws and procedures for redressing these injuries are inadequate to protect consumers. So if they're saying that the laws are inadequate, that means that they took it upon themselves to put laws in place that will be able to adequately protect us as a consumer, right? All right. And letter C says available non-abusive collection methods. This is what they're saying they found, means other than misrepresentation or other abusive debt collection practices are available for effective collection of debt. So misrepresentation, abusive debt collection practices, all of these things are happening. All of these things are happening. So there is an abundance of evidence regarding abusive practices. So the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act is going to describe to us what some of those abusive, deceptive, and unfair practices are. All right, interstate commerce. Now, again, anytime that we talk about interstate commerce, we're speaking about business that is being conducted through the mail, over the phone, face-to-face, via radio, television. Any means of communication with the consumer is considered interstate commerce, right? Abusive debt collection practices are carried on to a substantial extent in interstate commerce and through means of instrumentalities of such commerce. Even where abusive debt collection practices are purely intrastate in character, they nevertheless directly affect interstate commerce, right? So what is the reason why Congress enacted the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act? It is the purpose of this subchapter. When they're speaking about the subchapter, they're talking about Title 15, Chapter 41, Subchapter 5. It is the purpose of this subchapter to eliminate abusive debt collection practices by debt collectors, to ensure that those debt collectors who refrain from using abusive debt collection practices are not competitively disadvantaged, and to promote consistent state action to protect consumers against debt collection abuses. Okay, so let's look at some of these definitions, right? Because some of these words are underlined. And so if you recall what I stated last week, when you're reading legalese, in order to get the full meaning of the sentence or the full meaning of the text, we really need to know the definition of each individual word, right? So how do they define debt? The term debt means any obligation or alleged obligation. Now, this is very important because when we're reading the legal language, or means the right to choose. So what is it saying? The term debt means any obligation or alleged obligation of a consumer. So if or means the right to choose, and it is the obligation or alleged obligation of the consumer, doesn't that mean that the consumer has the right to choose to pay money arising out of a transaction in which money, property, insurance, or services which are subject to the transaction are primarily for personal, family, or household purposes, whether or not such obligation has been reduced to judgment. This or in this sentence right here is very, very, very important because these creditors and debt collectors out here are creating the belief that we are required to pay a debt. But clearly, Congress has something else in mind, right? They're describing the debt as an obligation or alleged obligation, or means the right to choose. It means the right to choose. We have to know these little nuances when we're reading to know that that means the right to choose, right? And you see that they say alleged. Alleged has a definition on its own. It means something, right? That means you say that I owe something, but can you prove it? That's what alleged means to me. Because in court, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove, right? In law, not just in court, but in law as a whole, it's not what you know, it's really what you can prove. So basically Congress is saying, hey, okay, consumer, right? There's an abundance of evidence of the use of deceptive and unfair debt collection practices. So if Congress is defining debt as an obligation or an alleged obligation, that means that that debt collector has the responsibility to prove to the consumer that they actually owe the debt. Because if they can't prove it, then it's just an alleged debt, right? So that's very important for us to know. All right, and so how do they define a consumer? The term consumer means any natural person obligated or allegedly obligated. There's that word or again, okay? There's that word or, obligated or allegedly obligated. Now, the right to choose to pay does not fall on the debt collector or the creditor to decide if we should pay it or not, or if we are required to pay it or not. The right to choose falls on the consumer because we're in control. It's what we say it is, right? So the term consumer means any natural person obligated or allegedly obligated to pay. The law defines a natural person as a consumer. We are the natural person, right? We're the natural person. Now notice the difference between the natural person and the person as defined in the FCRA. Congress defined the person in the FCRA as an individual or an entity, right? They look at corporations as people as well, but a corporation is not a natural person. And that is the difference between the natural person as defined in the FDCPA and the person as defined in the FCRA. So depending on what law you're trying to enforce is going to determine how you define yourself in order to state your claim, right? So we have to be very mindful of who we are defining ourselves to be, and we are the consumer. All right, so let's get into some definitions. All right, now if you were all on with me last week, we went over some of these definitions, and I'm just going to reiterate it because if we have to just drill it into our brain so that it sticks, so that we really know and understand who we are when we are dealing with creditors, right? The term bureau means the Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection. It doesn't say anything in this definition number 1 about Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. Those are not defined as bureaus. They are defined as consumer reporting agencies. So when you're looking at the definitions of any of these laws, you have to pay attention to what you see and then pay attention to what you don't see listed. It doesn't say anything about Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian, all right? The term communication means conveying of information regarding a debt. Okay, so what is defined as communication? The term communication means the conveying of information regarding a debt directly or indirectly to any person through any medium. Any means all. Okay, so what is a medium? A medium, it could be a face-to-face conversation. It could be an advertisement that you see on TV. It can be a letter that you receive in the mail. It can be them communicating with you through a debt collector. It can be an advertisement that you hear on the radio, right? That is all forms of communication. It could also mean something that you see in the sky. You know how those planes have those trailing banners? So when it says any, it means any medium. All right, and we already defined what a debt is. Okay. All right, the term consumer means any natural person obligated or allegedly obligated to pay a debt. The term creditor means any person who offers or extends credit creating a debt or to whom a debt is owed. So how do they define creditor? The term creditor means any person who offers or extends credit creating a debt or to whom a debt is owed, but such term does not include any person to the extent that he receives an assignment or transfer of debt in default solely for the purpose of facilitating collection of such debt. Now, I want to speak to some of the sovereigns out there, right? And the fact that a lot of us are in every situation defining ourselves as the original creditor. Now, when you're dealing with consumer law, it's very important to thoroughly define the definitions and stating who you are so that you can properly state your claim, and you can properly state what the responsibilities of you are as the party to that transaction, in addition to the responsibility of the other party that you're doing business with. Now, if we're stating that we are the original creditor, that means that we are basically stating that we offer or extend credit creating a debt or to whom a debt is owed, right? And that we regularly receive assignments or transfer of debt in default solely for the purpose of facilitating a collection. So if we're not actively engaged in facilitating collections of a debt, if we're not actively engaged in assigning or transferring a debt, now we do regularly extend credit because the money is created with our signature. We know that. But do we, even though we're regularly extending credit, this is the part where we fall short: assignment or transfer for the purpose of facilitating a collection. So even though we are regularly extending credit, are we regularly facilitating collection of such debt? So when you're defining yourself as the original creditor, you really have to break down the term creditor as defined in the FDCPA. Because if the definition of creditor does not fully, if your definition and how you're defining yourself does not fully fit how it is defined in the FDCPA, you can be unknowingly opening yourself up to a certain level of liability when it comes to stating your claim when you're going after a creditor who actually does regularly extend credit. They regularly receive an assignment or transfer of debt, and they regularly facilitate collection of such debt. So I guess I'm saying that to say that depending on the situation, we have to really take a step back and define who we are in that situation. Because if you're defining yourself as the original creditor or the creditor, it's not going to fit every single scenario. So you have to pick and choose what hat you're going to wear in which situation. That's the best way that I can explain it. All right, and we already went over the term debt. That means any obligation or alleged obligation of a consumer to pay money arising out of a transaction, okay? The term debt collector means any person who uses any instrumentality of interstate commerce. Okay, so let's stop there. How do they define debt collector? Now, every company that you go up against is not defined as a debt collector. So it depends on who you're going up against. Are you going up against a collection agency? Are you going up against a bank? Are you going up against a subsidiary of a bank? Are you going up against an individual, a person? So we have to really be careful in defining the party that we're going up against in terms of how we define them. Because again, if we do not properly define ourselves and the other party, we could potentially lose out on our claim, and that's not what we want. Okay, so it means any person who uses any instrumentality of interstate commerce or the mails in any business, the principal purpose of which is to collect any debts, who regularly collects or attempts to collect directly or indirectly debts owed or due or asserted to be owed. So it's easy for us to think, okay, pretty much everyone is a debt collector. It's easy for us to say that, but again, the definition of a debt collector, you have to make sure that it applies to your specific situation, right? It has to apply. All right, let's see. There's another definition in here that I want to go deep into. Officer, location information. Okay, we're going to go into the location information. That's actually one of the ones that I wanted to go into. The term location information. Now, I'm not going to read all these because we would literally be here all day. There's certain things that I just wanted to point out to you that's going to get you to think. The term location information means a consumer's place of abode and his telephone number at such place or his place of employment. Okay. So that is location information. So I'm going to go to the actual section that talks about location information. Okay. Acquisition of location information. Acquisition of location information. And this is 15 USC 1692B, acquisition of location information. All right. Any debt collector communicating with any person other than a consumer for the purpose of acquiring location information. Okay, so when we think about location information, what does it say? Any debt collector communicating with any person other than the consumer. So we've already established that we are the consumer, right? We are a living, breathing, natural person. Okay, so what does this mean? If you have a debt collector that is calling your place of employment to try to collect a debt from you at work, and they're speaking to a coworker or a manager, right? If you have someone that is calling, debt collectors do a lot of skip tracing, right? They do skip tracing. If they call a cousin's house and they try to find you through your cousin, any situation where a debt collector is communicating with a person other than a consumer. Now, I'm going to just go a little bit deeper. You're a consumer. You know that your name is written in upper lowercase, right? Tamara Tolbert, capital T A M R A, capital T O L B E R T, right? Why is it that when you receive a bill in the mail from a debt collector, your name is written in all caps? Do you write your name in all caps? Put a 3 in the chat if when you write your name out or you sign your name, you write it in all caps. Just put a 3 in the chat. I don't think I'm going to see any 3s because most people don't. Most people do not write their name in all caps. So you have to sort of ask yourself a question. When you receive a bill in the mail, who are they communicating with? Who are they communicating with? Are they communicating with you, even though it says Tamara Tolbert or Rudy Milton? Are they communicating with you, or are they communicating with someone else? Think about it for a second. How often do you see your name appearing in upper lowercase the way that it should be written that represents a natural person? How often? Right? We're going to come back to that after I go deeper into these laws because I really want you all to think, because it's a lot deeper than what you think. It's so deep. So a debt collector communicating with any person other than the consumer for the purpose of acquiring location information, right? So that means they're looking for you. Not only are they looking for you, they want you to respond to the correspondence. They want to get the reaction out of you that they're looking for. So if they send you a letter in the mail that's addressed to your all caps name, you think that is you. So you're going to respond, not knowing that they are not speaking to you as a consumer. They're speaking to your entity that was created that appears to be you. I said I wasn't going to do it, but I did it anyway. I said I wasn't going to do it. Right. So this is basically outlining what they can and what they cannot do. Okay. All right. So they shall identify themselves, state that they are confirming the correct, they are confirming or correcting location information concerning the consumer, and only if expressed, requested, identify his employer. Okay. So this is what they must do. This is what they are required to do. Okay, so what did we say location information was? Consumer's place of abode, telephone number at such place, or his employment. So they basically have to state that this is what they're trying to identify. Okay. Now, this is regarding communication. So what does it say? Not state that such consumer owes any debt. What's the definition of state? The term state means any state, territory, or possession of the United States, District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, or any political subdivision of the foregoing. Now, it's funny because when you read this statement right here, you're thinking, oh, okay, so that just means that they can't say that I owe a debt. But when you look at the definition of state, it doesn't say anything about speaking. It is defining a jurisdiction, a territory. Right? This is why definitions are very, very important. This is why definitions are important, right? Any state, territory, possession, you see it. It doesn't say anything about someone verbally calling you and speaking that you cannot, or that they cannot state that you owe a debt. This is strictly based on jurisdiction. It's deep, y'all. It's so deep. And so we've already gone over the term consumer, and we have gone over the term debt. All right. What does number 3 say? Not communicate with any such person more than once unless requested to do so. Let's put a pin in that. Let's back up for a second. What does it say? Not communicate with any such person more than once. Okay. Okay. How many times have you gotten phone calls when your bill goes past due? How many times has the collector rang your phone? Did you give them permission to call you? Did we ever give them permission to call us? No. No. Right? Not communicate with any such person more than once unless requested to do so by such person, or unless the debt collector reasonably believes that the earlier response of such person is erroneous or incomplete. They don't get to determine if a response of a such person is erroneous or incomplete, and that such person now has correct or complete location information. Okay. Not communicate via postcard. What does this mean, not communicate via postcard? That means something that you receive in the mail, right? A postcard is usually something that's open, it's not inside of an envelope. Communicating with you via postcard is a violation of privacy, because anyone that is handling your mail can see who you do business with. That's a violation of your privacy. That's why they cannot communicate with you via postcard, because it's a violation of privacy. The postman should not be able to see that you do business with Navy Federal Credit Union. The postman should not be able to see that you are receiving a correspondence from a debt collector, because that is a violation of privacy, right? Not use, number 5, not use any language or symbol on any envelope. Okay, so what is considered language or a symbol? Isn't this a language or a symbol? Isn't that a symbol? Let's see, who else can we look up? Yeah, Kohl's, Costco, all those people. Right? Isn't that language or a symbol? Let's see, who else? Who else we got? Isn't this a language or a symbol? Right? Okay, so what does it say? They shall not use any language or symbol on any envelope or in the contents of any communication. So what does that mean? Even though they cannot communicate with you via postcard, it is still illegal for them to send you a piece of mail that has a language or a symbol that identifies them as a debt collector. So that means that they cannot use a language or a symbol on the outside of the envelope, nor can they use it in the contents. What does it say? Not use any language or symbol on any envelope or in the contents of any means everything, communication affected by the mails or telegram that indicates that the debt collector is in the debt collection business or that the communication relates to the collection of a debt. So you see how we are literally being violated like every single day, and we don't know that we're being violated. We're thinking, this is normal. They're branding themselves, right? They're branding, oh, Great Lakes, this is the student loan people. Okay, so now the mailman knows that you have a student loan, right? Or this is the mailman now knows that you do business with Sam's Club. The mailman knows that you do business with Walmart. The mailman knows that you do business with Target. Do you see how this is a severe lack of disregard for your personal privacy and non-public personal information? They completely disregard your privacy. They violate your privacy every single day and do things that they are not supposed to do. These companies put their logos all over the place. They have the logos on the envelopes. They have logos inside of the letter. And federal law, now mind you, this is federal law. This is the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, U.S. Code Title 15, Chapter 41, Subchapter 5, that clearly states that they cannot use any language or symbol on an envelope or in the contents of any communication. That means monthly statements. Monthly statements. So every monthly statement that you get in the mail that has a company logo on the envelope or inside of its contents is a violation under this subchapter. Okay. All right. Now this is pretty common. Most of us know that if they know that you're being represented by an attorney, that they have to contact that attorney directly, right? So number 6 says, after the debt collector knows that the consumer is represented by an attorney with regard to subject debt and has knowledge of or can readily ascertain such attorney's name and address, shall not communicate with any person other than the attorney unless the attorney fails to respond within a reasonable period of time, right? So this section right here, y'all should be able to go and get your stack of bills and get all the correspondence that you receive on a monthly basis and mark it up every place that you see a logo, and you now know that it is a violation of 15 USC 1692B, that they are not supposed to use any language or symbol on any envelope or in the contents of any communication affected by the mails. That's everything. That is literally everything that we look at every single day, right? That's everything. And so this is why Congress put these laws into place, because there is an abundance of unfair, deceptive, and abusive practices, right? That is causing significant financial injury to consumers, and it erodes consumer confidence and undermines the financial marketplace, right? And so this is what Congress is trying to fight against, help us to fight against, rather, because they're not going to, tell us what our rights are. We literally have to go and seek out this information. And and we have to read it, and we have to read it, and we have to study it, right? So I hope that this information was helpful. We covered the FDCPA, 15 USC 1692B, acquisition of location information. My job, again, is to provide clarity and understanding surrounding consumer law in an easy to understand format, so you all can take and use this information in your specific circumstance. But the whole purpose of me starting this series also is so that, you know, it'll bring to light all of the things that are going on that we don't realize is going on, and to really inform you of, well, provide clarity around your consumer rights. This information is here. I can't make this information up. These laws were written by Congress. As you can see, I'm not adding information. I'm not omitting information. I am simply reading the law and providing clarity so that it can help you along the way. So my name is Tamara T. Bush. Thank you all so much for joining me this evening for Consumer Law Clarity. And I will see you all again tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Bye. Peace and blessings, everyone. Make it a great, 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 great evening.